Hello, hello. I am Mr. J, and today I want to talk about um, some of the best ways to communicate post-disclosure from infidelity. Um, I always start with a corny dad joke, and today's is this. Yesterday, I decided that I was only going to sing while driving in reverse. That way, I could consider myself a backup singer. But bum. All right. If you can take two deep healing breaths with me, in through the nose, out through the mouth, preferably with your eyes closed, but however you feel safe. And again. All right. It's almost always a struggle for couples to communicate about topics that matter to one but not the other, especially if this topic references past hurts. Unfortunately, just talking about such heated discussions or topics can cause a fight. When marriage becomes one fight after another, most couples withdraw from such topics. After all, who wants to talk about a subject where the mere mentioning of it leads to a bigger emotional outburst or argument? Couples often end up burying concerns, stewing, or communicating in passive aggressive ways. When there's infidelity in the picture, the process becomes even more urgent. The topic of infidelity hits too close to home for some partners, as each one has a world of hurt associated with the topic. Keep in mind, the one who betrayed has some unhealthy coping mechanisms that came from somewhere. And obviously, the person that was betrayed now has a world of hurt because of the betrayal. A wayward spouse might feel guilt, shame, and be the object of blame, obviously. Wayward spouses would often prefer to just bury the topic for their own purposes. Such withdrawal causes a betrayed spouse to feel abandoned, unloved, unheard, unwanted. Keeping in mind, the person who stepped out of the relationship, there's a lot of guilt and shame. And, 9 times out of 10, you ask somebody, did you ever think 2 years ago you would have cheated on so and so? They were like, crazy, crazy, better chance of getting hit by lightning. So they're disappointed in themselves and they're dealing with all of that. Last thing they want to do is talk about it constantly. At the same token, the person who was betrayed needs to talk about it constantly. So therein lies one of the big issues. This leaves a gridlock between spouses, and the gridlock causes more withdrawal, more hurt, more misunderstanding, um, more projection, and more negative motives. The gridlock causes each spouse to go into his or her head and tell themselves an unhelpful and often negative story that has occurred, which is why I say we always have to be careful of our own narrative, our own dialogue, because we will attach meaning to things and that meaning comes from our own filters. So we need to be very careful. The Gutmans, I'm sure you're familiar with the Gutmans. If not, look them up. They're phenomenal relationship researchers. The Gutmans have a method of getting through communication gridlock. These 5 steps serve as a guide to help couples being more understood and heard versus being misunderstood and ignored. The Gottman's 5 steps can also be used to talk about affairs or anything in a relationship or a marriage. And the 5 steps are these. Number one is feelings, two is realities, three is triggers, four is responsibility, and five is constructive planning. The purpose of working through the 5 steps is to deal with the aftermath of fights or the disagreements. The idea is to process past fights and past injuries. Processing something simply means that you can talk about it without it getting completely explosive. You need to have a conversation about whatever it is you need to talk about. You need to be emotionally present while having this conversation rather than being reactive. Exuding such a state of mind is easier said than done, of course, because these are very emotion filled conversations. This requires a calm and possibly some emotional distance at times from the incident itself. I always say, if possible, when two people come together to talk about anything, but especially something that hits home like infidelity, can you almost put yourself in another person's shoes? Not each other's necessarily, but like pretend you're talking on behalf of a friend, not yourself. You know, when you did this, it hurt the soul of A, B, and C because once it becomes personal, we become very angry and volatile. I know it's much easier said than done, but if you want a productive conversation, sometimes you have to apply these techniques. Keep in mind that the goal in processing events is creating greater understanding. That is, greater understanding of each and other's viewpoint without being reactive. Even though it's difficult to do, each of you needs to assume that your spouse's perception of the reality has validity. Does not mean that the perception is true for you at all. It means that their perception is true for them. Step into your spouse's shoes for a moment and take a good look at why your spouse might have the perception that completely differs from you, and most likely it will. I call this listening with your heart. A lot of us like to listen with our mind. As soon as they're done talking, I'm going to respond to what they said and I'm going to let them have it, whatever. That's not listening with your heart. Listen with your heart. Let's look at these 5 steps more in detail. Again, they're feelings, realities, triggers, responsibility, and constructive planning. Feelings. Feelings are all about reporting how you felt during a particular encounter. When sharing feelings, your spouse needs to listen quietly. Your spouse needs to avoid commenting on your feelings during this process. They can take notes, but otherwise they need to witness and listen. Each couple takes a turn at this, and it's on any designated topic. It could be putting your dish in the sink after you eat. But you have to remain on focus. You can't start getting into, you did this for your mother 20 years ago and you forgot to take out the trash and you don't have sex with me and what. No, you got to stay on topic. Um, if you need to take a pause, if things get on off topic, fine. Just make sure you recircle back to the table. And then explain why you had to stop. You know what? You were talking about this, then you derailed. I was getting dysregulated. When I was getting dysregulated, I felt my voice increasing. When you sensed my voice increasing, your defenses came up. We needed to take a break. Now let's start back where we left off. All right, realities. Each partner will have the opportunity to describe their own reality in regards to the topic. As each partner listens to the other, both partners need to summarize and acknowledge their partner's reality or interpretation of the event. So again, let's just say you're talking about putting a dish in the sink. Okay, what I hear you saying is that within 10 minutes of me finishing my meal, you'd like me to put the plate in the sink. Did I hear that correctly? So you want to kind of summarize what you heard. Let me remind you again that you need not like, love, or agree with your partner's reality at all, but you do have to respect their perspective and the fact that it is their reality. Because we all say things to our partner, and our partner says things to us that are like out in left field. Like, are you from Mars? Are we living in the same house? Where did you get that from? But that's their reality. We do the same thing. Triggers. Each partner will get a turn in sharing the experiences, events, and the memories that are triggering. Neither partner is permitted to judge the other partner's trigger. Again, you don't have to like it, you don't have to love it, you don't have to agree with it, nothing. Just understand it. Triggers are highly personal and always involve a story. Each partner needs to have an opportunity to tell their story. Since spouses are not mind readers, the story of a particular trigger often needs to be told to be understood. And basically, you want to lean into your partner when you guys are sharing triggers. You want your hearts want to lean back into one another. Again, you're listening with your heart, not your mind. Common triggers could be anything from dates, life events, restaurants, songs, hotels, places, whatever. Anything of the reminder of the affair, infidelity, cheating, blurring of lines, massages, what have you. One of the most trying challenges for those choosing to rebuild is that the partner who stepped out is often a walking, talking trigger for the betrayed spouse, and you have to be cognizant of this. So, yes, dates are going to be triggering, places are going to be triggering, billboards might be triggering, but you might actually be living with your walking, talking trigger. And this is going to be something you're going to have to be cognizant of and know and work through. The next step is responsibility. This is often the hardest thing for people to do, especially because we live in a society where victim mentality is encouraged. For the wayward spouse, he or she has sometimes convinced himself or herself that she was the victim of an unloving spouse or some other external phenomenon. What happens here is the person who stepped out is really trying to alleviate guilt and justify their behavior. A wayward spouse must take full responsibility. Yes, your partner could have tremendous contributing factors of why you went towards your unhealthy healing mechanisms, but you have to take 100% full responsibility and accountability for you going to your unhealthy coping mechanisms, drugs, affairs, porn, drinking, whatever it is. A wayward spouse is always responsible for his or her behavior and choices that they made, period, end stop, end of discussion, non-negotiable. When there is an affair, the only real victims are the betrayed spouse and the children. And I'm going to be honest with you, the person themselves, because we violate our own values. We violate our own morals and ethics when we make decisions. Because again, you ask the average person, hey, did you think you'd ever cheat 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago? They'd be like, no, you're crazy. Absolutely not. On the other hand, anytime there's a fight, each spouse will have to take responsibility for their part in the disagreement. During disagreements, both spouses usually engage in bad behavior. While bad behavior might be heavily skewed to one spouse, it's usually a two-way street. So no matter if you are in the position of being the betrayed spouse or in the position of being the wayward spouse, your spouse deserves a minimal level of respect when speaking about hard topics. So let's just say you're talking to somebody who did you wrong and you're married to them and you want to reconcile, you want to rebuild, whatever. They're not a dirty monster, blankety blank who will never blank, blank, blank. No, your decisions hurt me, and this is what I need from you. We still need a level of respect and conversation. Name calling and all this other stuff is just unproductive. The final step in this is to create a constructive plan. Now, each party needs to come up with at least one thing to do to make the communication better in the future and the relationship better in the future. You need to take a good look at what went wrong and develop a plan to address it and what will you do to prevent it in the future. So basic, and this goes with not only talking, but it also goes towards how you will improve and rebuild on your relationship. So listen, from now on, when you go somewhere, could you please send me a text and say I'm on my way there? In the first 3 to 6 months when you're trying to rebuild, could you please take a picture of where you are and send it back? Could you please ask me how my day was? Ask me about my triggers. Also, when we talk, let's really try to look at each other. Let's not look at the phone. Let's not look away. Let's not roll our eyes. Let's not fold our hands like this. Can we please look at each other when we talk? Could we please have a understanding that we're going to listen to understand, not listen to respond? Could we please try to both come to the table to listen with our hearts, not listen with our minds? Could we apply sympathy and empathy and love and mercy and grace to what we're saying, even if we don't necessarily like what we're being heard? So you guys have to come up with new rules in order to have productive conversations, because these conversations are 100% needed. But if they are constantly explosive, they're not going to happen. And then we just continue to live in resentment, hostility, anger, so and so. And that just further divides us down the road. I hope you got something today out of this class. If you have any questions, never hesitate to run them by me or write me. And I hope you have a beautiful, beautiful day. So smile, take a deep breath, and enjoy your day.